So, I know I've said this so many times it's getting boring, but this fart thing is illustrating. Boy, look at this. I watch a lot of movies, and I probably enjoy the extras at the end of the movie as much as I enjoy the movies. And there's a phrase that comes up, has always come up, about making movies called "got left on the cutting room floor." So of course I researched that, figured out what it meant years ago. This is the cutting room floor. Speaking of the cutting room floor, I've got some mixes of chemicals. I'm going to show you how I use Croil. I change gears like a stinking small block. Probably until about 95, I used Shooter's Choice and Croil as my gun cleaning compound, and there was a smell, an ambiance. People talk about Hoppy's number 9 as though it's the best smelling thing in the world, and Hoppy's has got a certain thing. But Shooter's Choice and Croil was just next level. So, since I've quit using Croil for gun cleaning or for anything else that I can think of, I now use it just like this. Ambiance is important, people. It doesn't make the food taste better, but it's important that your environment that you work in be enjoyable. And sprinkling Croil all over the cutting room floor, soaking these papers and stuff, make sure that it smells piquant in here at all times. That's important. So, at the risk of flogging this horse mercilessly to death, I'm going to again use some of this Fart Project stuff to show just how, how do I put this? It has illustrated some situations and some issues, and I just can't help but use it for that. One of the things that I've talked about many times in the past is the concept, for instance, of a powder being too fast. I'll say too fast, or the gun pressured out too quick, and that can be confusing. Like, what does that even mean? Well, these are the powders, and I don't know if this focus is right or not, but these are most of the powders that I have used, tried, developed, used through the 50 Fart and the 50 Fart Blossom in an attempt to find the powder that burns hot enough to burn consistently to get the ES down. Basically, everything below this side of the chart is too cold. These are useful up through here. This is, I used a whole bunch of them right here because one of them showed a really good ES progression. The problem is these up here are slow enough that they fill the case up far enough that it's getting hard. I'm doing my workup for the most part using these cheap 650 grain bullets that I got for 80 cents a piece, because I can go through a lot of stuff. Then I just ramp it up to my 1002 grain bullets, which are more money. And me being a cheapskate, I tend to do that kind of stuff. So I've gone through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rounds and saved some money that way. But when I go to drop a 1000 grain bullet in on this burning rate of powder, in some cases, some of them are crunching pretty good. They barely fit. I mean, remember, these bullets are seated right out there. This is a big dog of a scenario. So I've already done some free bore, but in an attempt to balance, you know, this is all, everything's made up here. This case, both of these cases are cut on a lathe parallel. When I say there's no taper in these cases, I mean there's no taper in these cases. These case walls are parallel. This case right here has been fired 40 times, 50 times, and then I decided to wreck it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Because I'm a safety geek, and I believe that we have to learn to test things. And in working through these powders that have no prior, I started kind of here in the middle, and I went down and I started getting into heat problems here, but I ended up going all the way up here to the hottest stuff on the chart. I've got to work up here for, yeah, let's see, this one is hard to read upside down. Oh, I'm reading above the line. I'm going to line promo. No, red dot and clays. These are powders that are so hot that I use them for fire forming with no bullet. And I tell people, if you ever put a bullet in front of one of these, you're going to blow your gun up. Well, here I am. 20 grains of Hodgdon clays is working with a 650 grain bullet, but don't use it with a 1,000 grain bullet because it's right on the raggedy edge. But it's hard on brass. It's hard on cases. It slaps them really hard. So we're going to go through all of this. We're going to get some. We got some cool illustrations of how headspace affects fire forming and a bunch of different things. So, I don't know why I'm standing here with the camera in the middle. I guess I just got up here and started. So I'm going to pan down. I'm going to do my thing here. Pan down onto the table. Let's see if I get this right. I don't know if I'll get it into a useful spot or not. I don't need to go that low. Should really kick some of this stuff out of the way. So what we're going to do here, this is stuff that is in no book. And as I keep trying to say in these episodes, we need to learn to think differently. Come with me and learn how to develop and how to think. We got all these powders to try. Number one, we're working with a cartridge that has never existed before. I just made it up. It doesn't have any manuals. It doesn't have any recommended burn rates. It doesn't. And I'm going to show you how I took powders from as hot as clays, which is too hot for most pistols, all the way through, and all the way to, and I just ran out of case capacity up here. This right here is the upper edge of the case capacity for a 1,000 grain bullet. I can go all the way up into this area, which is 4831 with the 650 grain bullets. But when I go up to 1,000 grain, this is where I start crunching. I start not having room. So the purpose for this episode and this part of the journey is we have to learn to see the world through another lens. We have to learn to see the truth behind the bullshit. And that's what we're doing. We are going to go through, we're putting our They Live glasses on so that we can see through the aliens. And we are going to go together and we're going to find safe powders, my people. So, come with me and I'll show you how. I gotta find my range of motion here so that I can know where to go here. Just, this is always the hard part, guys, is getting set up so that I can get everything into the camera. And start to explain how to do something this way, using this range of powders, and going through a range of stuff that's not only would not be recommended for this, but that could hurt you. We have to go to a place where we can explain why things happen so that we can make good decisions and so that we can be really safe. And bit by bit, I have to go through and show you that, okay, these powders over here in the pistol burn rate side are too hot. They're too fast. They burn too fast. And I need to illustrate to you so that we can know together what that means. You hear this kind of stuff thrown around all the time on the forums, but what that means is important. So I'm going to give you an analogy. If you got to get a bowling ball up and rolling, you're going to need a long barrel and a long stroke. When you go bowling, you take this big heavy ball and you put a long power stroke into it. Now, if you set your bowling ball on the line and went up and tried to kick it down and make a strike, you'll find out, oops, that's too fast. That's too hot. This powder, my foot, is designed. See, pistol powder and shotgun powder have got a really big bore to length ratio. A pistol has to, first of all, they shoot light bullets for their size, and they kick them up like kicking a bowling ball with your foot. So basically you're kicking a beach ball and you got a short stroke to get that bullet up and moving. You put that same powder into a big long barrel. Like if these were 30-inch barrels, I wouldn't be able to use some of these. But because there's 16-inch barrels, I can use some of these, and instead of reaching up and kicking the bowling ball, I can walk up and hook my toe on it and launch it with my foot, okay? It's about inertia and overcoming that inertia. And these powders up in here pressure out. They smack that bowling ball and they expand the cases and they wreck the cases before they ever get the bowling ball up to speed, which, believe me, this bad boy is a bowling ball. So, we started here, but we started very low and we worked up into our area, and some of these faster ones here would push the 650s, but then you had to get up into here to even get the 1,000 grainers up. We're in the too hot range. These can be hard on cases, it says. They are hard, and I use these fast ones to wreck a few cases because we're going to go through what is a wrecked case, what is too much, what is a flattened pressure, what are pressure signs, what do we, blah, 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 blah. So, too hard or too fast expands the case head and ruins the brass before it gets the item up to velocity. It's still useful, but it's useful for other things. So now, one of the first things that happened, I started low. Let's just start with this one right here. This happens to be blue dot. It topped out at 23 grains, and I had started it down, and I'm going to spend very little time sharing these loads with you. But I started this down in a safe range, and the very first time I pulled the trigger, this happened. And to the uninitiated, that would be a severely flattened primer. And you'll notice that the primer hole is very deep. So this is what I mean when I said we need to all learn to see the world differently. We need to put on our magic glasses. And we need to see, if this was an internet forum, somebody would put this picture up and say, what happened? What happened? This load is in the book and it doesn't look too hot and it flattened the primer so bad I'm afraid I'm going to blow the gun up. Because that is a very flattened primer. In fact, that primer is so ridiculously flattened that it's not real. That's a fake flattened primer. See if I can get the angle so that you can see. That thing goes right out and rolls right over the edges. That's not even real. This is a headspace problem. Here's what happened. This is the pressure signs that you can get from this. The load I started with was a little bit too low to be safe. So it didn't, the primer fired, the powder started, the case gripped the sidewalls, bam, because it's very fast, and the primer popped out, it protruded for a variety of reasons. When I first fired this case, it had no headspace. This is one of my throwaway cases. Bear with me here. This is a case that I used that originally headspaced on the mouth and then blew this shoulder. These are cases that I made from 404 Jeffrey that are, sorry I had that out of camera. This is the fart blossom case in my right hand right here. This other thing that I was playing with and wrecking in my experimentation is a throwaway case. It got trimmed off way too short from the start. So it had no headspace. Didn't even have anything to stop the case from moving forward. So I cranked up the neck tension, and I took one of these great big old bullets, and I rammed it in there as hard as I could, and I got the gun to fire. Now, before anybody says, oh, dangerous, 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 we get this, again, on the internet and in all the books, excess headspace is dangerous. Let's just keep this really, really, really simple. No, it's not. That's a simple, straight up, flat out bullshit call. Simply and straightly, excess headspace cannot be dangerous. There's no mechanism for it to be dangerous. I have people every day saying, would you check my headspace? I think I might have stretched it and I don't want it to be dangerous. Well, that kind of stuff is confusing to the smart people. The smart people, really, headspace can stretch? What, bolts coming back? As they're coming back, it's going to shoot, it's going to blow up, and I got another bolt. This is all fear. I refuse. I will not live in a world of guesswork. I will not live in fear. I will not go to books, and if I can't find, that's how I'm able to do this kind of stuff safely. Because I was able to quickly and easily recognize. Not only that, but I went to another powder a little ways up the line. I think this was Lil Gun or Accurate number 9. Got the same thing again. Here's another. These are two completely... Oh, no. This is Blue Dot. This is Herco. I have them written on here. So both of these flattened the primers out and showed these pressure signs that just look heinous and hideous and scary, but in fact there's no pressure there at all. In fact, it's a low pressure problem. The case backed out, the primer popped, the primer popped out when it was stuck, and then the pressure got high enough that it slid this little case because it's, even though it's parallel in there, it unlocked and it smashed that primer against the bolt face. That flattened primer is not a pressure sign, that is a low pressure sign. This one's got a wicked deep hole. So the primer is popped above the bolt face, the firing pin is all the way extended, this case slams back, the firing pin impresses more deeply, and it takes that raised case head and flattens it into the hole and mushrooms it out. Now, one of the things that's kind of disconcerting about a Savage is it doesn't show any of the quote normal pressure signs. When I say normal pressure signs, the Remington 700 is kind of what most of this, it's kind of the ubiquitous all around Chevy 350 build a custom gun, try something new on. And it exhibits a pressure sign because it's got a great big ejector hole, and it'll hammer that and you'll get a shiny spot, you'll get a mark. These Savages don't have that. They have a little tiny ejector plunger. If you had or have really good eyes, you can see an ejector plunger scrub on this guy right here, if I can get the light right, and I can't even tell. I can't see it on the monitor. But these will go all the way up to case head expansion without showing ejector marks. It's just something the Savage does. This one right here, unfortunately, this is showing the load on it, which is, this happened to be an H110 load. This one pressured up to the point where it also has a shiny spot or two, and that primer is flattened, really flattened quite a bit. Not flattened in the way the low pressure loads did it, but flattened. This case right here was fired with clays way up here until it was destroyed. Tight clay. This thing will barely go back in the gun. I broke the extractor clip off. I sheared off the Savage extractor clip on this case because I ran it up over and above. Understand that even though this is designed as a subsonic load, this was way up at probably 1,800, 2,000 feet per second with a big bullet when it destroyed the case. And I'm going to show you, you can see the tooling marks from the chamber on this thing. See if I can roll it around in such a way that you can see. Remember, this has no taper, no shouldering abutments, absolutely nothing. This is a lathe tool run in to make these steps, and they are dead parallel. This case has never been resized. It's been fired 20, 30, 40 times. I finally decided to sacrifice it. No. Yeah, it is. It was, I had started here in the middle and I kept going. I got up here and I finally decided, this is one of those no headspace ones again. These are throwaway cases. Again, I'm showing you just what kind of a tightwad I am. I'm taking cases that I mismade and I'm salvaging them and using them for another. I say things like I have a lot of tests running. Well, I also always have a lot of salvage things going. This is an undersized case, but I got this one to hold well enough, and this clay's ignited with a soft enough primer. No, this wasn't clay's. I digress. This has probably had 15 different powders through it. I wrecked the case using clay's. Those pressure signs on the outside are something that normal people will never see. Those ironing marks there as I roll this back and forth, that's mapping. You can't feel it. My chamber is fairly smooth inside. But those are the tooling marks from making this chamber. This ring right here is from where I turned the brass back. Artifacts, just trying to make you understand them a little bit. But the primer is not blanked on any of these. This thing has a fairly small firing pin. Not so much flattened like those first two, which was a headspace issue. And in the end, when I destroyed this case, you can't really see it, but there's a flat spot. I had to file a flat spot right here by my thumbnail on both sides. This case had expanded so far that it would no longer go into the reloader, into the primer. It wouldn't fit into the shell holder anymore. So I filed it in, I got a primer pocket, and I fired it one more time. We were right now at 2.9 thousandths. So all the crap you see about, ooh, if you see the case head, the very limit of case head expansion is 0.0008, which is bullshit on so many levels I don't even want to talk about it. Nobody can measure tenths, whether you've got some knife edge micrometer or what. Plus these things vary by almost a thou right out of the box. They're never round, they're never anything. I measured this, and I measured it in the groove, and I measured it over the top, and I have a bunch of, but none of that's meaningful except to say the top end of this was 3 thousandths of case head expansion until the primer got loose. Now I'm going to shut this off and do another pickup video behind it.